Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the new year 2025. Thank you all. We have a very packed agenda today. So, as you guys come in, please feel free to put your names, your organizations, what you do in the chat so we can continue to meet each other. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We have a great session today in lieu of our favorite time each quarter, reporting month. Okay? But do not fret, we got you covered, no worries. This team did an amazing presentation today, and then today we will talk a little bit more about it, and you'll get to meet them. We have the honor to have the experts in data and reporting from OVC On Performance Management Tool Team and Improved Research Team and RTI International. And again, we have a lot to cover. I'm Florencia from the Framework team, and I quickly pass it to Charlie and Christina, my colleagues from Framework, for a quick introduction.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Charlie Borg. I'm the Deputy Director of Framework, and we're really happy to have these two teams and to have you all here.
Hi everyone, Christina Bailey, Program Officer of Anti-Trafficking Programs with the International Rescue Committee and Framework. And echoing what Charlie said, we're very happy to have you guys all here with us today.
Yes, and if you are here from IRC, you will work with Christina closely this month because of reporting month again. We are so thankful to the experts and presenters today that you're taking the time to do this and meet with this wonderful set of friends, agencies that are joining us this month. And stay tuned. We'll put links in the chat throughout for information. We have these sessions every month. And again, we'll share the information, but again, I don't want to take time. I'll pass the mic to the team. Feel free to, we'll have Q&A at the end, but feel free to put also questions in the chat as we go, as we will be collecting and monitoring the chat. Thank you guys, and I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aubrey Sneesby. I'm a Senior Research Associate with the Performance Management Team as an OVC contractor. I'm really excited here today to talk to you about some best practices and talk through your questions. I believe my colleague Maribel Fernandez will also be joining, but I think she's having a little bit of tech difficulty, so you'll see her name moving forward when she can get back on. But I'll pass it over to Ashley Ellis, who is our OVC program coordinator.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Ashley Ellis, the Performance Management Coordinator at OVC, and I work closely with our contract team, as well as the Improve team at RTI. So really excited to have you all here and really looking forward to today's discussion. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Houston-Kolnick. I'm with RTI International. We're a research nonprofit based out of North Carolina, and one of our large projects is the Improve tool. So you'll hear more about it, but I'm one of the co-directors, and I'm joined by my colleague Sarah, who works on supporting the TTA on that project. I'll pass it over to her.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Sarah Philbrick. I am a trainer and technical assistance provider for the Improve tool. And I'm excited to present a little bit more about it to you today. And I'm not sure who should go next, so I'm just going to go on mute again.
It looks like Maribel is on the line now. If you want to introduce yourself briefly, Maribel.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for those technical issues earlier. My name is Maribel Fernandez, and I am a research associate on the performance management team.
Awesome. So I'll get us started for today. I will go ahead and share my screen. If someone could verbally let me know that you can see my screen, that would be great. Awesome. Yeah. I saw it. That sounds up. All right. Perfect. All right, so real quick before we get started, the agenda today, we thought we'd go through a quick PMT labor trafficking data analysis to, give some fun tidbits, then move into some OVC performance data and reporting best practices, and then finally close out with some OVC resources and specifically for human trafficking, and then we'll pass it over to our improved colleagues. So to start us off, for this analysis, I wanted to do a quick note. So while OVC in general collects trafficking victimization data across all of the different programs, what I have for you today is specific to just the OVC funded human trafficking grant program. So what you are all funded through. So it's specific to just that specific program. And I will go ahead and move us forward. So first piece I wanted to go over today was trafficking type. So I have the reporting periods for fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024, so a 2-year period for this analysis today. And when looking at that reporting period, it's about approximately 25% of all new individuals, so about 6,000 individuals during that time period that identified as experiencing labor trafficking or sex and labor trafficking. So as you can see in this pie chart, it's about 18% for just labor trafficking and then 7% for sex and labor trafficking. As a quick note, the rest of the analysis is aggregated for those two trafficking types or trafficking categories. And we do have a new tool that I'll go into a little bit more later called the OVC Data Dashboard, and we'll link as well. That if you want to check out the more specific minutia of each of the trafficking types and the demographics, you can do so on your own time, which is really cool. So moving forward, the first demographic I wanted to go over is race or ethnicity. And one quick piece, it looks here for, or excuse me, it looks like for the FY 2023 to 2024 reporting period, over 50% or about 3,000 new individuals served were identified as Hispanic or Latino. A quick note, this actually differs when accounting for all the different trafficking types. So if you look at the demographics across all the different trafficking types, Hispanic or Latino individuals make up about 25%. So that's an interesting trend for labor trafficking specific survivors. The next demographic I wanted to take a look at was gender. So over 56% of the new individuals served during this time period identified as female, who also experienced labor trafficking or sex and labor trafficking. This differs when accounting for all labor trafficking, or excuse me, all trafficking types. So all trafficking types, female individuals make out about 78% of those individuals served. Further, with male individuals served, those experiencing some sort of labor trafficking make up 40% of the population. And whereas with all trafficking types, male individuals make up about 16% of that population. So really, this is showcasing that more male individuals are more likely to have experienced labor trafficking. Again, really quickly here, this also is an example of this demographic type where there's differences between labor trafficking and then sex and labor trafficking. So when you just look at labor trafficking, there are more males being served than females in general. One last interesting trend about this demographic is that between FY 2023 to 24, more female just labor trafficking individuals were being served. So there was an uptick in females for just labor trafficking. A lot of information. Please feel free to stop me at any time if anyone has any questions. All right. Moving on to the next demographic. This is for age. So over 63% of the new individuals served who experienced labor trafficking were in the 25 to 59 age category. With 63% of those individuals experiencing labor trafficking, this differs, accounting for all trafficking types again. So when you account for all trafficking types, we're seeing about 43% of those individuals experiencing trafficking in general that identifies 25 to 59. And also both the 13 to 17 and the 18 to 24 age ranges show lower percentages for those experiencing labor trafficking versus all of the different trafficking types. So some interesting tidbits for just looking at labor trafficking survivors and within the last 2 fiscal years. All right, so moving on to OVC performing data and reporting best practices. Before I go into the best practices, I did just want to have a quick slide about how OVC uses performance data to really emphasize the importance of accuracy and timeliness for reporting performance data. I know I'm a little bit biased as a part of the performance management team, but we really do want to make sure that we have quality data for performance metrics and measures because we use this data all the time. So we have ad hoc data requests all the time to demonstrate the value and specific benefits of the program to Congress, federal and state government agencies, other victim services, service organizations, as well as just the general public. We also develop reports on programs and how to demonstrate outputs on grant funds. We also emphasize progress towards achievement of OVC strategic and program goals, so for OVC in general. And then finally, we try to reach target audiences of grantees, federal partners, and agencies in the general public with this data. So some best practices for PMT tracking in general. So first thing I always like to say is you should always exercise data governance. And I think this is especially important for you all. So first, what is data governance? Data governance looks like having written procedures and processes in place to ensure standardized data practices and security. So why is this more important for you? Because of who you serve, which makes sense, right? You are serving victims of human trafficking who may be less inclined to share this information due to their past experiences or potentially due to their citizenship status. So you want to ensure policies like obtaining informed consent or how your organization deals with PII or personally identifying information are always in place. You also want to make sure that you include sub-grantees as a part of your data plan if that's applicable for your organization. So for example, how are you securely transferring that data that your sub-grantees are giving you? And my colleague Maribel just put in a confidentiality toolkit resource into the chat. This is a great resource, has a ton of different information that was put out by the National Network to End Domestic Violence and has some really good tools for pieces around informed consent, PII, and also how to choose different databases. So next best practice, I always say, is make sure you familiarize yourself and your team with the performance measures. So it shouldn't just be the person that's collecting all the data that knows the performance measures. Really, you want to make sure that what you're collecting is also streamlined with the performance measures and has those pieces into account. It'll make it all the more easier during reporting time. And one quick note about the performance measures, they are set up so hopefully they're easy for your organization to collect. So for example, especially for your population, we know all of the demographics have not tracked or not reported options for those clients that are potentially not comfortable sharing that information. So the next best practice we have is working with your team to identify the best approach for actually collecting the data. So this can look different for a couple, for all of your organizations, depending on what sort of organization you have and how it's set up. So for example, this might look like, do your intake forms, or do you have intake forms in different languages, or do you have a case manager who speaks different languages and is able to fill out those intake forms for your clients? And when you are thinking about these examples and thinking about these questions, you also want to make sure you have sustainability in mind. So for example, for the case manager that, may speak different languages, will you always have that case manager position speaking different languages? Just a quick note there. And then finally, last best practice I have is making sure you choose the data collection tool that works best for your team. So does that look like a shared online Excel spreadsheet? Does that look like an actual database tool or online server? Again, thinking about sustainability, what do you have to pay for the database, or potential for storage issues later on for Excel templates, etc. Again, making sure that you're putting security of that data storage practice at the utmost importance for that piece. All right, so moving forward, best practices for actual reporting. So we always like to do these. They seem a little bit simple, but I promise it's always good to reiterate. First, in terms of the actual reporting into the PMT, you always want to make sure you're gathering and aggregating all of the data beforehand and drafting your narrative responses in Word before you have to put them into Just Grants. Preparation is key for making it easy and pain-free reporting period. And we're always here to help if that is something that you need help with. Next best practice is save your responses frequently. Obviously, there's a timeout functionality within PMT, so you always want to make sure that you're saving what you've inputted so it doesn't get lost. We have lots of calls to the help desk regarding that piece. So I hope that's never happened to any of you. Next is include, and this is more specific to your narrative pieces. The next three are include information about your project's accomplishments and challenges. So the more information that you put, and this kind of goes into the next best practice of avoiding one-word answers, the more information and context that you put into your narrative, the better for your grant monitor or manager to will be able to help you with those challenges, or will be able to help uplift those successes that you've been going through. And finally, make sure to share the changes that affect your program, such as changes within your organization. So for example, if you have new staff, or if there is an issue with funding, again, more context, the better in terms of narrative pieces, and making sure that your grant monitor or manager is up to date. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat, so hopefully no questions so far, but again, please feel free to send them over. Next, I want to go through some resources that we have for you all. So that, like I've been alluding to throughout this whole presentation, we have published OVC PMT data dashboards, and we recently just unveiled the human trafficking specific one this week. But we have three others that have specific pieces. Oh, sorry, real quick, I just saw Tabitha. We will be sharing the office hours link once I have it at the end of this resources page. So yeah, absolutely, we'll share that. But yes, so these data dashboards, we have one on VOCA victim assistance, one on VOCA compensation, victim compensation, one that's tribal specific, and then recently this week was the human trafficking one. These are all aggregate level for the performance data. And we really hoped to have these put into a dynamic, visually appealing, and user-friendly platform that you all can use and take a look at the data with. And my colleague just put in the chat the performance measure webpage, and then also the direct link to the human trafficking data dashboard if you guys want to take a look. A quick note on some important considerations for actually analyzing performance data and also taking a look at the data dashboard. One piece is we always want to say is avoid drawing conclusions, as especially performance metric data or measurement data may contain limitations. So for example, and this is, I'm sure very known to you all, the data within the dashboard, or also that I showcased earlier, none of that's prevalence data, right? That's just what's being reported by OVC grantees. So for example, you're not going to want to take the data in the dashboard and state that sex trafficking is more common than labor trafficking in the US, because that's not necessarily true with this data. Instead, you want to state that OVC human trafficking funds reported assisting more sex trafficking survivors than labor trafficking survivors. So just an important note of making sure to always, when you're looking at your data and utilizing your data, to incorporate any potential data limitations. So the next piece, as an important consideration, is always be aware of potential inaccuracies. So again, using the dashboard as an example, you never want to assume that all of the organizations that are within that dashboard are providing every single service category. As you all know, in specific to your funding, you may not be providing every single service in-house. So as you would, if you're using the data dashboard or using it for your certain visualizations, you would want to make sure that you're noting that these data collected are OVC funded activities across multiple organizations, and there is potential for outliers or skewed data. Finally, our last important consideration we have is making sure that there's alignment and understanding of measures across data sources, always. And this is especially important if you are ever layering or comparing different data sets. So the example I have here is for the human trafficking data dashboard and potentially looking at some census data. You wouldn't necessarily want to layer or compare the age demographics for each of those data sets because they have different age range definitions. But what you could do is you could look at the potential for minors versus adults that are served, and then also look at the minors and adult proportions within the census for a specific location, and also accounting for population size. If you have any questions, again, feel free to input them in the chat. But at this time, I just have a couple more resource slides for you. Here we have a bunch of different links. We have an upcoming quarterly human trafficking performance measure reporting office hour. So if you have any specific PMT questions, please feel free to come to that. It's on January 29th from 1 to 2 p.m. ET. We're happy to answer any questions at that time too. And then just some of the general OVC PMT human trafficking resources. We have a data dictionary, the welcome guide, as well as the questionnaire and the data Excel spreadsheet job aid. And I know Maribel just input that all into the chat. So thank you, Maribel. And then finally, how can we help on the PMT team? So you can always schedule a one-on-one with one of us. So we are here to help you discuss your performance data, here to help brainstorm ideas on how to actually use your performance data to advocate for funding within your state. And also we can help identify best practices for data analysis and visualization. And as always, you can contact the OVC PMT help desk. And I'm going to use this time to just go over here. I think Maribel's going to input it in the chat. We are available to help at any time. And I think it is Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m. You can call that number, or you can always email us as well. That concludes my section. I will go ahead and pass it over to our improved colleagues. And again, feel free to ask any questions.
Thanks so much. Confirming, can folks see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Great. Okay. That's interesting because I can't see that it's showing. So Anyways, thanks so much. Thanks for letting me present today on the Improve tool. I'll just be giving a quick overview of Improve and then passing it over to Jacqueline, who will talk more about the alignment with the PMT. So Improve is a free tool designed for collecting outcome and quality measures, and it was developed with feedback from victim and service providers and survivors. It's open to any organization or program that offers services to individuals affected by crime. Improve provides a suite of concise standardized surveys that can be tailored to match the desired outcomes of the services provided. These surveys are distributed to survivors upon significant completion of services. Surveys can be accessed through the internet or by paper if upon request. Improve offers service providers the ease of swiftly viewing and exporting the amassed data. And we usually do a demo, which is always a lot of fun and cool to see, but for the sake of time today, we can't. But if you would like to see a demo, you can go to the overview training that we'll put in the chat, and in about 27 minutes in, there is a demo. You can also check out other resources at our website at improve-tool.org/learn, and we'll put that in the chat as well. So there's a number of benefits to using the Improve tool. It holds promise to improve service delivery by identifying strengths and challenges, has the potential to boost staff morale by showing areas of excellence. You can use it to support the use of best practices by identifying areas of improvement and training. It gives survivors a voice in services and how they are delivered. You can obtain insights for planning and resource development. And likewise, you can prove that funds are making a difference for survivors with empirical data. The Improve surveys are comprised of three main components. One is the outcome of services, and this section assesses the extent to which the victim's physical, emotional, psychological, social, economic, and legal needs are addressed through the services provided. There's also quality measures, and here survivors share their perceptions regarding the quality of the interactions with staff members. And then finally, there's demographic information, which are brief inquiries about the survivor's characteristics and the duration of their engagement with the services that are offered. And here are the 6 base surveys or modules, and you don't need to scramble to write these down. They are easily found on our website, which we will also share in the chat. For each of these, there are a set of core outcome and quality questions which cannot be changed, but then there are also optional measures which can be added to any of the chosen modules. And this chart shows the breakdown of which modules current Improve anti-trafficking service providers are using. As a point of clarity, there is no differentiation between labor and sex trafficking in Improve. As you can see, a good majority are using the support services or community advocacy module or the mental health focus services. We also have several that are using the underserved population focus services or legal justice system focus services. And then we have a few that are using the crisis intervention and referral module or the medical or forensic care coordination module. And we wanted to share this data with you just to give you an idea of which modules seem to be aligning nicely with other human trafficking service providers. We always encourage providers to work with staff to identify whichever module works best for them. And whichever module they select, they have the ability to customize the questions by adding questions from another module. So far, we've had nearly 300 Improve respondents who have experienced human trafficking, and they had this to say about the impact of the services they received. So 96% reported increased knowledge on how to stay safe. 93% reported increased identification of social supports. 92% reported increased ability to handle everyday challenges, and 89% reported an improved sense of hope. Likewise, here is what the same respondents who experienced human trafficking had to say about the quality of the services they received. So 91% received information or referrals for outside sources of help that matched their needs. 96% felt that staff understood what they were going through. And 97% felt that staff treated them with respect. And just real briefly, I'm going to talk a little bit about our anti-trafficking community of practice, which we recently launched. And the purpose of the community of practice is to create a collaborative learning environment, to promote networking and relationships, to capture and share local knowledge, and to increase access to TTA and support. We have participants who are at all phases of the Improve journey. Some members are creating their Improve accounts and selecting their modules. Others are just now launching their surveys, and still others are looking at how to improve their data collection and use their data. Members frequently share processes and tools that help them in their Improve implementation, like tips on how to engage youth and how to get feedback and buy-in from staff. And the structure of the COP, so we meet monthly over Zoom for 1 hour, which is completely voluntary. We address member issues, questions, concerns. We provide tailored TTA to respond to their needs. We share aggregate data to facilitate benchmarking. And we include summaries and additional resources shared following the calls. And I don't think I mentioned before, but we also have a public-facing dashboard. So with those outcomes that you saw, if you wanted to explore those more, you can go to our public-facing dashboard and explore. And we'll put that number in the chat as well, or that link. And I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline, who will talk about bringing the data together.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I was replying in the chat. So there was a question of, is Improve only for HT survivors? It is for anyone who serves victims or survivors, so persons impacted by crime of any crime type or victimization experience. So if I saw someone was part of a DVSA program, you could use Improve as well. Anyone can. And it's free. We'll just keep saying that. Free, free, free. This diagram kind of shows right across when we think about, a problem occurs, victimization occurs. That's what we're all addressing in our services or in the models of how we try to support folks. And so from that issue, then we have an input, right? OVC funds victim service providers who then provide support to survivors. And that output is the effort that you all put in and day out to meet survivors' needs. The PMT data that Aubrey did such a great job of overviewing, right, shows the amount of effort that is happening to address survivors' needs. However, the next piece of the puzzle, which is really where Improve fits, is what does that change? What does that mean in survivors' lives? And so you'll see that little arrow that goes to like you're delivering services, what's the quality of those services or quality of outputs, and then really what's client success, which is where Improve fits into the puzzle. So that's how we see the ways in which PMT and Improve can relate to each other. Aubrey mentioned the NCBSP, so other kind of metrics about the prevalence or how often folks are experiencing crime. You might have local data about trafficking in your area that you might use to kind of help show that problem part of this diagram. But ultimately, with our ultimate goal of safety, justice, stability, and wellness, Improve is a tool that helps you see, are you reaching that ultimate goal? So what does that look like in practice? Let's get an example. So Organization A serves trafficking survivors, and they have an upcoming planning meeting, and they want to talk about, how well are our services supporting survivors, and are there any areas where we can improve so we make sure that we are appropriately allocating the resources that we have, right? What funder doesn't love financial stewardship as a way to talk about how you could use Improve to show that you're really being thoughtful in your process of how funding is used. So this organization collects PMT, and they also use Improve. Like many human trafficking organizations that use it, they're using the supportive or community advocacy service module. So they've been collecting data. Now they're going to look at it. So you can go to the next slide, Sarah. So Improve data, that data can show this provider that survivors are answering favorably for increased knowledge of how to stay safe, ability to handle overwhelming emotions, and an improved sense of hope. Those are all outcomes that this provider is doing really well on. What they see where folks are saying less favorable is their knowledge of sources of help in the community and their increased identification of social supports. So those are two areas that they're like, folks aren't having, victims and survivors are telling us that they're not having as good of an experience of seeing those changes in their lives. So let's go to PMT data. They're looking at that effort, right? Their services offered, and they find that their emotional support and safety services have the largest number of victims being served. And the crisis intervention and individual counseling services are the two most common services provided. Lastly, they look at the referral to other services, and that's within the top 5 most common services provided. So with these two data, looking at them together, what could we conclude? What could we look further into? So going forward, this organization takes that data and says, okay, we need to continue doing our crisis intervention and counseling services, especially when we look at metrics like an improved sense of hope, the safety, knowledge of ways to stay safe, right? And even ability to handle overwhelming emotions. All of those seem really closely tied to those two types of models of service. But when we take a closer look at our referrals, we see maybe that there's this disconnect, right, between the referrals they're providing and meeting the needs of those they serve. They could look and say, are there less favorable outcome responses that varied by race, age, sex, sexual orientation, or education? We didn't go into this in detail in the overview, or the demo could show it. If we have time, maybe I'll pull it up. But each provider has an individual dashboard that takes their data and allows you to group your data so that you could look at, do you have different responses by different age ranges, by different sexual orientations, by different genders? And then that's where you could look and say, oh, wow, actually, we see that our referrals for folks who identify as bisexual are actually where the less favorable responses are going. Who are we referring them to? Are those providers who potentially have training and experience in addressing the needs of folks who are bisexual? Maybe we need to find a different service provider, or just talk with our referral source and do some training with them. So that's one way you could right shift and allocate resources to hopefully improve responses. You could look at how are survivors responding to measures about the quality of the referrals included and improve, and again, do those vary based off of different demographics? And then are there other areas within quality measures that could be addressed? Types of questions that are built in to improve include things like whether or not they felt that their needs were understood, that staff were sensitive to parts of their culture or their identity, that they felt respected, that they felt heard, that services were easy for them to use. So there's a lot of ways you could take these data, look at what your effort is, the impact that that's having, and then really guide your service delivery to see if that's working well for all different types of people that you serve. So when we look across different and there are questions about who experiences different types of who's providing those.
Hi, y'all. I don't know if it's my internet. Can you guys hear?
Yeah, it's cutting out for me
tiny
too.
glitchy.
Yeah, I think it might be on her end.
Okay.
But what
Yeah,
a
if we could-
fantastic frozen face.
I think maybe we can give her just a second. I will hop in if she doesn't come back, but I don't want, she's probably mid-sentence, so we'll just give her a second, perhaps. Feel free to add any questions in the chat if there are any.
Yes, please do so. And sorry, yeah, my internet was glitchy too, so that's why I wasn't sure if it was mine or not. I think I got even disconnected at a point.
Okay, I'll hop in. So when building grant applications moving forward, you could use the following data to answer these various types of questions that we have here, and build a case for why services are needed and show funders what you're doing or intend to do to assess whether the program is making an impact among those you support. And then we've added our contact information here, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing as well.
And I saw you're going to send the a summary of the PowerPoint, but not the actual PowerPoint. Is that correct?
We can send the entire PowerPoint. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you. I was
also
trying to
from
capture.
to answer the question from the framework side too, we'll share the recording, we'll share a takeaway sheet, we'll share all of the links, and then we'll share whatever resources are included from the OVC PMT and improved team that they want to be sure that you all have. So that might include the improved PowerPoint. It can include those resources, but each agency has different kind of internal mandates about sharing PowerPoint, so it's not always something that we're able to do.
We can share our PowerPoint too on the PMT side.
That is wonderful. I wanted to say a couple of questions that came in, and some you answered already. For the improve, is it only, just to clarify, is it only for OVC funded agencies, projects, or it can be for anyone?
Correct. It's for anyone, any organization, service provider who provides services to people who have been impacted by crime.
That is wonderful. And one thing that came to mind as you were talking, and from me being on the other side in the past, that even the use of this tool can be not only for data collection, improving services overall, but if you have client voice projects, client feedback projects, we talked about it. We've been talking about it in our learning collaborative. We've been talking about it in a Brunch and Brainstorm and individually with offices. Great tool for client feedback. And one other thing that I can take from this, a lot of us on the proposal put performance program evaluation of our own programming. And I think this can be also a wonderful tool to collect all this data, and even if have an external researcher, external analyzing all this compiled data. But this can be used for multiple things, and in conjunction with PMT guide us, again, not only in the evaluation, but even with the PMT, what you were showing, like the focus of our outreach, I know that in the past, with, again, some of our calls, we talk so much about where do we start with outreach? Where do we start when we are talking about labor trafficking, and we are trying to, expand our services and get more our work out there? Where do we start? And by knowing all this data, it kind of helps you shift your focus when needed, and the fact that you can reach out to them directly, I think that is a wonderful opportunity and resource that we often underutilize, and I blame myself for that as well. So that's why, like, bringing it forward and having you guys present is so important for us. Sorry for my monologue. Sorry.
Sorry about my internet. I'm restarting my computer, so I'm on my phone now. But I also just wanted to note, we do have a public dashboard on Improve now, which compiles, those 300 responses that Sarah showed you. You can go in and actually look at, for all organizations that serve trafficking survivors, who do they look like? Who are they? How big are they? You could look in your specific state. You could then see how are survivors responding to the questions that those folks are being asked. And it allows you to then, you could look at that for, are there any service gaps? Are there ways in which, like, maybe in your state we see that referrals are low, and that speaks to something. And so there's ways you can query it, not only for strategic planning, but then if you use Improve, you can compare your data to other providers who are like you to see, how do I measure up against other people who are like me? And are there ways in which then that can spark curiosity or questions or collaborations? And that's some of what the COP does, is just talking about how other folks are using the tool, and then also what they're learning from it. And our hope is over time we can expand that to really create a community of practice and thinking about how folks may be achieving different outcomes.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I have we see two questions. One from Tauta. My question links into what I was mentioning. Would a grant who does have a client voice survey deliverable be met with this tool? Or someone rephrase the question. I think I was choppy when I said it.
I think essentially she's asking if part of a grant award or what that office, that program had written into their narrative mentioned having a client voice or client feedback survey as one of their deliverables. Would that deliverable be met by using the improved tool?
I would
I
assume.
think this is
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
This is Ashley from OVC. I would say that's a great question for your grant manager. I wouldn't want to say that it meets, you know, the qualifications or anything in that respect if it doesn't. So I think that's a great conversation to have with your grant manager. But in the same respect, I do think it's a great option. So it does, you know, highlight survivor voice. It highlights their reaction to the services they're receiving and how they feel about it. So please reach out to your grant manager. All of the OVC grant managers are aware of the tool. And so, yeah, they can have that conversation with you. They're aware of it and they support it. So that would be great.
That is wonderful, and definitely a tool for collection at the very, very least, right? So definitely I will bring it up to your to point of contacts for your grants. The other question was, and my computer is going bananas, sorry. Okay, for the improved team, it was mentioned earlier that the tool was survivor vetted. Can you speak more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we went through a really rigorous design process. Can you all hear me now? I'm not frozen. Okay, just want to double check. We survivors were involved at multiple phases of the project. So it started off with some survivor interviews to know what was the most important for us to be asking about with the quality of the services they received and the ways in which they hoped services would have met their needs. So that was really one of the first steps we took to know what are the types of questions that should be asked within Improve. From there, we wrote some draft questions. Experts in the field who were victim service providers, network organizations, a whole host of different types of folks gave us feedback on those questions. And then we did something called cognitive interviewing, which is where we spoke with survivors and looked at those questions together and said, you know, what is this question asking you? How would you answer it? Is it easy to understand? You know, making sure the questions were worded well and that they were asking about things, again, that mattered to them, that were important. And then lastly, we did a pilot test with over 300 organizations where agencies then use the tool in their organization and survivors filled out the survey. And we really tested the whole process from start to finish before it launched nationally. So there's more steps in that process, but that's kind of the short and quicker version. And now we have folks who are using it all across the nation. We have over 700 or just about 700 providers who are using Improve.
Thank you. I want to give a minute. If there's any more questions, I can keep asking questions, guys. And I know, Christina, do we have any questions that came prior?
I will double check one more time.
I have one question for the OVC PMT team. You said that there was a spike at one point in data with the labor trafficking of female identified individuals. And I was curious if you had any impression of where that came from, if there was something going on in a certain region, if it perhaps follows a national trend of the moment, where you kind of think that data was informed from.
Yeah, so that happened within the 23 to 24 fiscal year. I will say I haven't done a specific regional analysis on where those potential folks are coming from, but I'd love to get into it. So can my answer be down the line, I will let you know once I've gotten a
All
chance to look
right,
into it.
Brunch and Brainstorm,
Yeah,
PMT
part two.
Improve, part 2. Can't wait.
They're getting us back.
For sure, and I think to have the full demo for the improved tool as well will be wonderful. If we do a part two. One of the things, two things that I wanted to ask. One was, Aubrey, you talk about the limitations, and I know at least here, there are some of the participants that may have more than one OVC grant, and although they're reporting differently, sometimes the clients might go because of the need, may go from one grant to the other one. And you spoke a little bit about aggregated data and all of that. Can you speak a little bit to that, to ease concern to the staff?
For sure. So when we present any OVC funded data, we do have that in our data considerations and limitations. Since, the PMT is collecting aggregate data from all the different awards, we do understand that there might be overlap with clients from one funding stream to another. For example, if you need to house the client under one funding stream and then you need to give them case management services under another, that's totally understandable and very happens often. So we make sure that whenever we're presenting the data and in the data dashboard, we have that as a limitation because we're unable to deduplicate that from the total numbers. So unfortunately, like I said, it's just a limitation of performance metrics, but we do note that whenever we're presenting it.
Right, and it happens not only when the agency has two OVC funded projects, but sometimes it's two agencies working simultaneously on a case. And I know in the past we were trying to, in the past, I believe it was with teams that we were trying to make sure that the client stayed with the same number, identifying number that it was given, and all of that. So people that were transitioning from one team to the other were a little bit confused, or not confused, but hesitant to make sure there wasn't issues with the data. But this is a great clarification. And the other one is you mentioned, not a question, but a reminder, and it was put in the chat that there is a spreadsheet toolkit, correct? That I think all of us should have next to us while we do this, because oftentimes all these questions, where do I put this particular thing, or and it happens as a supervisor manager, I used to have a lot of those, and we forget that we have this tool. What a wonderful thing to have now this month, especially next to your desk, and as a resource to use it. Because at least I know from the technical unit that we might get a lot of those questions, forgetting that we have that tool at our disposal.
Absolutely. And if you ever have any questions about where to put a certain service or how to actually categorize certain things within the PMT, we are more than happy to help with those questions. That's what we're here for, and we are a resource.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? We have a comment.
I do have a question that came in as part of registration. Somebody had asked, and this can be for whichever team is best, what are data collection best practices that are also in line with VAWA?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily, and Ashley, feel free to jump in here. We don't necessarily have alignment with VAWA in terms of performance metrics. But we can always, maybe if that's of interest to folks, we could potentially think of a resource in the future for that. And Ashley, please feel free to jump in if I'm incorrect there.
We can look into it.
Sorry, that was
Thank
also
you.
one of my questions that I sent in the
Oh, perfect.
when I signed up for the thing. Yeah, I think because
That
my
might be yours then.
organization.
I just pulled the whole registration report and looked at only that column. So it might have been you then.
that was definitely me. Yeah, no, it's
Awesome.
just because our organization is trying to adjust data collection to be in line with VAWA. So since that is a piece that they really want to take into consideration. So yeah, anything that you guys might think of down the road would be super helpful.
Yeah, and Alexandra, if you want to set up maybe a one-on-one coaching session where we could help you go through that together, yeah, we'd be happy to chat through that.
Oh, that would be great.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. And I wrote a really
And
long question too, so I
I was about to
apologize. You
say,
don't
did
have to
we
answer
answer
that
that
now.
one yet? We have a
no,
few
we'll
minutes.
go
I'll
over that.
ask. Okay, you got
Before
it?
we go over, I was gonna say that expect a lot of grantees going about the VAWA question because it was part of the funding that at least for organizations, our organization, no one will report the data to OVC, but when we collect the data, our data collection systems need to be in line with VAWA. So definitely something that we can continue to explore and have the conversation. And I'll go, Christina, you want to help me read Alex's question?
Sure. Okay, so is there any sense of percentage of grantees that have multiple funding streams under this grant? For example, Alex's or Alexandra's org has 2 trafficking grants, but it's for different states, so there isn't necessarily an overlap of victims. But curious about other organizations that may have multiple funding in the same site or state and how they might adjust data filters to minimize that overlap.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we necessarily have a sense of grantees with multiple funding streams outside of OVC because obviously we only track OVC funded grants. So we do have a sense of those grantees that have multiple OVC grants, but not necessarily outside funding. And in terms of, again, it's within PMT, the change from TIMS to PMT, I think it's less of an issue on the OVC funding side or OVC grant reporting side, because we just know we are unable to deduplicate any of those organizations or potential grant funding streams that might have clients going to multiple of them, because it's all aggregated up by quarter. However, if you have that concern outside of OVC reporting, that's something potentially we could have a one-on-one with and talk through a little bit further of some potential strategies. I hope that answers the question. And if not, please let me know.
She sent a thumbs up, so I think we're good.
Okay.
And
I didn't. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know that was a question specific to PMT. In Improve, just to note how kind of that would actually connect. Improve has the ability where you can create multiple surveys if you have different programs that have different intended outcomes, or if you need to track those data to report to a funder separately, you could create 2 surveys, one that by those different funding streams potentially. There's lots of different ways you could address that. So Improve allows for some of that customization in order to know, like, we help you think through a bit, or we can help you think through a bit of how you want to use the data and then what that means for how you should collect it. And that was one thing we haven't talked a ton about. Improve has office hours monthly that you could join, and we often do some strategy sessions with folks around that. We have a help desk that's available via email at any point in time. We usually get back to you in a business day, and then we have live and recorded trainings and a ton of resources on the website. So if you're curious about outcome measurement, but really kind of intimidated by the process, we really try and make sure that we're helping you through to think about how you do it in your organization. And so we're here for you to help. And so don't hesitate, reach out. We're happy to join and help you in the process.
Thanks,
Thank you, Jacqueline. We have 2 more minutes left in our time together. We have shared the satisfaction survey in the chat. Please let the PMT and Improve team know how they did and any feedback that you might have on other things you want to hear. And otherwise, we have time for one more question.
Do you want to talk about next month's meeting really quickly? Or Florencia.
Also, there's a link in the chat to join us for next month's opportunity, which will be a little bit different. We'll be talking less, you'll be talking more. We're going to create a shared space for networking and connection.
Yes, and we have the opportunity to plan together what you guys want to hear about. We finished today, sort of, with all the requirements that we wanted to go over this year. So we have an opportunity next month to open the mic and see what you guys need from us. What do you need from this space and create and try. We have some ideas, of course, but see the direction you want these calls to take this year. We are so thankful to you guys that took the time to present on these tools. We are so thankful. We know that you came from a whole training yesterday, and definitely we might reach out to you again for part 2, 3, 4, whatever we might need. Um, oh, and we have one question. When will the next improve office hours?
If they
If they
can't
can
make
make
it
it
in
on
January.
I'll have to look. I think we made it the third Tuesday of the month, but let me check really quick.
Okay, and we can
Or
share
I
everything.
can send it out. Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
when we'll make sure
And
to
we can
send.
also share the next 101 training, which is a place you could go to learn how to use the platform as a first start.
Perfect.
So we'll share both of those.
I'm gonna have a
Yes.
very robust takeaways sheet this month.
Yes,
I'm here for
The
it.
next
we all want it. Thank
the
you
next
all.
office hours is February 18th.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you all for attending. Aubrey, Ashley, Jacqueline, Maribel, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our Brunch and Brainstorm group. And we'll see you all next month.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.